Remember the Left 4 Dead series? It was a brilliant set of games that were the epitome of multiplayer zombie modes. It had enjoyable characters you could play as, the endless waves of enemies got harder the further you got, and it was probably one of the best games to play with your friends. 10 years after the release of Left 4 Dead 2 and we get this, Pandemic Express, a game that markets itself as being the same experience as Left 4 Dead but with one difference. Instead of AI waves of zombies, these are all human controlled. But does it capture that same enjoyable tense experience like Left 4 Dead did? Or is it just another zombie game that just adds to the overwhelmingly stale zombie game market? Well, welcome one and all to WiseFishGaming. My name is Matt and this is my Pandemic Express review. Now before we start the review, I need to state that the game, despite it being marketed as out now, is still in its early access stage, and it's not a full game yet, but it is still asking for £11, so I am going to be reviewing it based on the price tag. I'm just putting that out there. We start with the graphics. Graphically, this game isn't next generation or anything, so don't go into it expecting to have the biggest computer rig you have ever seen. But saying that, it is an indie game, and to be honest, although it's not competing against games like Dying Light, the graphical style is actually quite appealing at times. The game is pretty minimal in its art style, it's quite cartoony at times and it had me feeling similar in style to Team Fortress 2's graphics. Its landscapes are broad, but when you look out at them you can't see too much in terms of detail, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'd say it's going for a more minimalist style, and an abstract art style as well. Textures and everything seem really crisp and detailed, guns certainly look the part, especially on things like the rocket launcher. The roads had this really nice sheen to them, especially when the street lights bounced off them at night. Bricked walls looked very detailed and seemed to have a nice bump map on them to make them stand out as opposed to a standard texture. And things like foliage made forest areas really stand out as well. They felt lush and full of life. They were a nice touch, especially as they had really good animation to them as well, as they all blew in the wind. The same applies for trees, which you could see blowing around in the wind as well. As I say, it kept the world feeling alive and it was just a nice touch. The water looked great from the surface, especially in the moonlight, but going underneath the water it was very dark and nothing was really added to make it feel like you were underneath it. Not a massive flaw really, just made things quite dark. I suppose they were going for realism there. But anyways, water on the surface looked great. Now particle effects are pretty horrible, to be honest. When firing the gun you get this weird blood splatter effects coming out the top of the gun, which I really didn't understand. It also looked really low res, which was surprising considering the guns look very high quality. Also, when you finally kill a zombie or explode a ton of humans, they just explode into these black splodges. Not really much to it other than that, there's no real death animation or anything, just a load of black cloth from the looks of it. Not the most satisfying deaths, but I suppose it serves some sort of purpose. Just would have hoped for more when it comes to a zombie game. Maybe it's because it was going for a minimalist style, or maybe it was to keep graphics down to a minimum so it can run on any type of PC, but who knows. Finally, character models. Now sadly this is where I felt the game looked very ugly. The human characters weren't too bad, mainly because they had visible costumes on which were these weird striped shirts, blue trousers and their edgy looking faces, which were pretty funny looking in a good way. I guess these were mime artists or something. They looked fine even though the animations weren't all that great in my eyes. But the worst culprits were definitely the zombies. These just looked horrible. They were shiny black coated creatures with horrible looking arms that looked like boneless skinny people who had been dipped in tar. They didn't look good, and even though they were meant to look horrible, I mean they are zombies, they didn't really do anything for me. Also, the zombies running animation was horrific. The slow moving arms on the left and right were just slow and didn't add anything to the zombie. I will give credit where it's due though. I did like them having the design of having a spotlight on their head that went red when they found someone. I thought that was a neat idea and used well within the game. But overall the world designs and the textures were really good stuff. I like the minimalist cartoon look to the game, but I just felt like the character models just really let this down. Next up, let's talk about the sound. Now the sound designs are alright, and that's about it. There are some pretty great sound choices that made me smile. Those were the emotes that you could do as humans and the zombies. They're done by real voice actors, they sound hilarious and give some character to the characters. I kind of wish the characters had more voice lines where they could talk during the matches. It's great to use emotes, but I feel like it would have been nice to have some natural character dialogue as you ran around the map. Now the game is pretty damn quiet most of the time. You have music at the start of the games, and you also have cassette boxes lying about that you can play when you run around, but there is no music or anything in the main menu. meaning your first impression when you open the game is pretty boring and quiet. And then when it gets in the game, there still isn't that many sounds apart from gun sound effects and some alerts. Guns sound okay, they really aren't anything special, they do the trick, but it's hard to really differentiate between different guns. Shotguns didn't really sound overly impactful, neither do bolt rifles or any powerful guns like that. But overall the gun sounds just work okay. There's nothing to it that'll make you go, wow, that sounds amazing. They're just standard gun sounds that have been used before. Maybe I'm being a bit too critical, but for me the gun effects just didn't do anything for me. They're just standard stuff. There's no announcer, which would have been nice, but you do get some audio alerts that allow you to know what's going on. You have the sound effects that warn humans about how far away zombies are from them. You have sound effects that alert zombies where humans are on the map, which get tagged by other zombies. And you get the train progressing sound effects that allow you to know when the train gets to the next stop. You also have the death sounds when the human gets wiped out of the game. One thing I really hated about the sound design was the audio's panning, however. If you like having surround headphones, then this game will probably drive you mad. The panning doesn't work amazingly. For example, if you're standing on the train and you turn left to right, the engine sound will move from left to right depending on your movement, like every stereo game. But instead of it still being in one of the ears, it mutes the sound effect completely in the other ear, making you feel like you have gone deaf for a bit. After a while I had to swap the speakers because it was just irritating for a while. Maybe this was just my experience or it was a bug I encountered, but the sound design in this aspect was really bad. Overall, Pandemic Express's sound is nothing to be raved about. It's alright, and my biggest problem with it is it's extremely quiet 80% of the time. It would have been nice to have a bit of atmospheric noises like birds or something that just gives it a bit more substance. My favourite thing about the game was certainly the voiced emotes. I felt like they gave a character, they made me laugh, and I just hope they bring more voice lines into the game. Going on to the gameplay now, and this is the real talking point. Pandemic Express is pretty damn fun. When you are guarding the train to get to its destination in the group, and you are attacked from all sides by waves of zombies, the game is just so tense and also a barrel of laughs. The physics is probably the one thing that will have you in stitches most of the time. Players will be flying all over the place and most of the time you probably won't have a clue what is going on. But this just makes it so much fun. If this was way too competitive, all the charm would be gone. Movement, although it is extremely floaty when running about, it needs to be praised to some extent. I love that they have implemented the slide feature similar in style to Apex Legends is. I think they do need to work on the camera angle for that feature a little bit, as sometimes you cannot see what on earth you are doing. The double jump feature makes getting around really fun and adds more verticality to the movement. As well as this, you have mattresses and things that can boost you into the air, meaning that it's not always about boots on the ground combat. Firefights and chases can happen everywhere, and on top of power lines, on top of buildings, in the water, doesn't matter, there's no real limit to where you can go in the game, which I absolutely loved. On top of all that, the guns, when you fire them, can boost you into the air and away from an area. If the bullet connects with the wall you are standing in front of, you will get flung backwards, which may seem like a weird feature and it mainly plays a part in the combat, which I'll get onto. But this is another thing that can help with mobility. Not only can you double jump, but if you use your weapon it can technically allow you to triple jump, which is again great for verticality. Overall the movement is pretty fun. With a few tweaks I think it could be really great to get around the game. Wall running would be an amazing feature, but I don't expect anything from that. Now when it comes to combat, I was on the fence about it. The guns, as I say, have a pushback ability that allows you to gain air or move about, but it also pushes away enemies. I liked this at times, especially when being swarmed, but when fighting a zombie one-on-one, it's more of a ball ache than anything. I can sometimes push zombies back so far that it gives them a chance to gather their health. It's very hit and miss, and like I say, there were times where it was great and times where it was just very, very annoying. But for zombies on the other hand, my god is it frustrating. Sometimes it feels like you cannot move anywhere, even though you are much faster than your humans. If you are being fired upon by a group of humans, there will be almost nowhere you can go. You will be constantly pushed back and this will be extremely frustrating, especially if you are a zombie in the early to mid game. But then when you do get close to the humans, their attacks just felt so wrong. The animation again looks atrocious. It's so floaty and it looked like the hitboxes were completely off for melee attacks. It also just didn't feel satisfying to get a hit on an enemy. I really feel like it needed to have a better hit registration and better hitboxes, especially for the zombie melee attacks. Now the games last about 10 to 20 minutes and frequently end in the zombies winning the game. The game doesn't feel perfectly balanced. Zombies are really a big problem. They just all feel like absolute tanks when you fight them. Sometimes I'd be in a gunfight with a single zombie for about 3 minutes, but the fight was mainly me shooting because of course they couldn't get close enough to me because of the gun's pushback. On top of that, the zombie class called the Bomber felt extremely overpowered, as it would just be able to wipe out enemies so easily. For me, the health system needed tweaking, especially on the zombies. And the ultimate for the Bombers just felt very overpowered, even if they can be pushed back. The range of their bomb was just way too much, I felt. I like the ideas of the classes for the zombies and giving them an ultimate, but unfortunately there were only 2 at the moment, and the only one I ever saw being used was the Bomber. It would be nice to see more types of zombies at the later date, and maybe give people an incentive for picking other classes other than just the Bomber. Maybe it's just because the Bomber is overpowered, but there needs to be some incentive for the players to pick other classes. It would have also been nice to see some classes for the humans, for example. Maybe give them a chance to have an ultimate ability if they're doing well. But again, if they did add this, it would have to be tested and make sure it wasn't overpowered. On top of that, the games get a bit stale as well. Don't get me wrong, fighting off hordes of zombies is exhilarating at times, but after 5 to 6 games it gets a bit repetitive. Now on the main menu there are now new modes, but unfortunately they are locked off at the moment. I feel like when these modes are out the game will shine, but I also feel like it needs some sort of reward system for doing well in games. Maybe a daily challenge or achievements or anything like that. Something that makes the player keep wanting to play the game. I know they've got a customization section on the menu that is locked off at the moment, but this could be used for achievements and challenges and stuff like that. If these are linked, I think it will make for a great all-round experience, and hopefully the customization system isn't bloody loot boxes. So all round the gameplay was good fun, but it's lacking a lot of features and it just feels a little unpolished at the moment. And speaking of unpolished, let's talk about the technical side to the game. Now the game isn't perfect by a long shot. It's pretty hit and miss at times. Now there were a few games I could play where the game was absolutely fine and no bugs were present at all. But then there were others where server connections were bad, clipping outside the map seemed extremely present, and some players just seemed to completely bug out. There were also times where I couldn't get into games for a long time, or if I did I'd be waiting in the lobby for a while waiting for players to join. But luckily the studio is doing constant hotfixes which sorts out patches which needs to be praised. But don't go into this game thinking you'll get perfect bug-free experiences. 70% of the time you will, but then you'll start to notice them, and they can really ruin your experience. Finally, I wanted to talk about the community play in the game and the social features. The social features are pretty good. There is an option for push to talk, which is always a bonus for games like this. I mean, it's beaten Fallout 76 in that regard already, and it just means that we know what it means really. Just well done to them for adding that. You also have the opportunity to mute all players with a mic with ease. There is a massive mute all button in the player menu, and trust me, this is a godsend because oh boy, you are gonna need it. Community is well, at times they are fine, but you will be getting a lot of people screaming in your ear, shouting racist abuse at one another, playground insults, and you'll also get extremely desperate streamers begging you to watch their channels.
Can you guys do it real quick? Or like if you have a living room iPad, you know, just put my stream up on an iPad.
This is not the game for anyone who has like social anxiety or anything like that. And unfortunately, almost every game you will end up muting everyone in your whole squad, which is a real shame because working as a group really comes in handy, especially near the end game. If I was rating the game on its player base, then sadly this game would get a very low score. Quite frankly, there were many times I wanted to quit because I was getting so irritated at hearing the same terrorist joke over and over again with people playing as the zombie bombers. It really ruins the experience. Overall, Pandemic Express is a good game that shows a lot of potential to be a great experience. The gameplay is great fun, especially when working in groups fighting off waves of zombies, or even charging in on the humans. I feel like this game is one that you bring out when you want to have a gaming night with your mates. It's really enjoyable and the physics will have you in stitches a lot of the time. They say it's like Left 4 Dead 2, but for me it's more like Halo's Infection in its gameplay style. It has a lot of problems though, the game is very buggy still, and has a few connection problems. The game is pretty quiet and lacks any real personality. The community can be very abusive and make the game quite hard to play, and its sound design and combat can probably be improved a little bit. At the moment the game feels like it's a mod for a bigger game. It doesn't feel like it's worth paying for. There are a few modes and different tabs appearing on the main menu, and when they come out I think this game will be well worth the £11. But for now the game is fun for a little bit, and really only worth playing if you have a group of friends. But honestly, if you're looking for a game like Left 4 Dead 2 that you can play for hours on end, well, unfortunately at the moment Pandemic Express isn't the game for you, but it certainly can be in a few months' time. Cheers for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. It may be worth keeping an eye on this game because I think it shows great potential. I just feel at the moment it isn't really all that. But anyway, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Next week I'll be doing another history of video, and I've put up a poll in the top right hand corner of the studios I'm thinking of doing it on. And if you haven't watched the Respawn Entertainment one, I've put that in the top left as well. So let me know who you'd want to see on the next video that I make. But that's all for now though. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Cheers.